Hello. Today we are presenting our research project on Bextra, which is also known as Valdecoxib. This drug was originally introduced as a safer drug, which is used for relieving pain, and it was eventually withdrawn from the market after major safety concerns came into light, which we will discuss in our upcoming slides. My name is Sumit Bhardwaj.
And my name is Lauren Brill, and a little outline of what we'll be covering today is we're going to go over the background of the history of NSAIDs and why CO2, COX-2 inhibitors were began to be developed in the first place, which leads us into what Valdecoxib is as a drug, its mechanism of action, and some primary research that raised safety concerns, including cardiovascular and dermatologic risks. And that will lead us to some FDA laws and regulatory actions that came into place as a result. We'll also go over the quality control process and the SOPs behind the development of this drug and why Bextra was ultimately withdrawn, leading to the key lessons that we drew from this case.
So let's dive into some of the background of why NSAIDs needed improvement. So if we talk about the traditional NSAIDs, which we call as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, for example, the drugs in the market, we have ibuprofen, Advil, and naproxen. They reduce pain and inflammation, and they work by blocking enzymes, which we call COX-1 and COX-2. So a little bit information about both these two enzymes. COX-1 is considered a housekeeping enzyme because it protects the lining of our stomach and also it supports functions of our kidneys. When NSAIDs block COX-1, they increase the risk of ulcers in our stomach and bleeding internally. uh, COX-2, on the other hand, is only activated when the body is inflamed. So the idea was if we can block COX-2 only, we can treat pain without damaging the stomach. And that's how exactly what led to the creation of COX-2 inhibitors, uh, reducing while reducing pain and also minimizing the toxicity on our stomach.
So, a key distinction is the difference between the COX-1 and the COX-2 enzymes and their functions, as well as their physiological molecular differences. So, as you can see visually, COX-2 has a side pocket, which will be key in the mechanism of action later on. COX-1 is always active. It's a constituent enzyme, meaning that it's always active at a fixed constant rate in the body. It functions in protecting the stomach lining as the epithelial cells lining the stomach uh, secrete the mucosal membrane that protects it. It also maintains platelet function. It's essential in clotting and supports the blood flow through the kidney. The COX-2 enzyme, however, is activated during inflammation, and this produces prostaglandins, which results in pain, swelling, and fever. So the idea behind the COX-2 inhibitor drug class was that blocking this enzyme would reduce pain without harming the stomach by blocking COX-1. This was considered a major scientific breakthrough.
Now let's understand about our drug a little bit, which is Valdecoxib, also known as Bextra. Uh, it was branded as Bextra and was approved by the FDA in the year 2001. It belongs to the drug class which we already discussed, which is COX-2 inhibitor. Uh, it was basically prescribed for diseases which are osteoarthritis, which is a degenerative joint disease where the protective cartilage cushioning, it starts cushioning our bones over time. The another one is rheumatoid arthritis, which is a chronic autoimmune disease where the immune system mistakenly attacks the healthy tissues in our body. And then we have menstrual pain, post-operative pain. Uh, The drug was considered convenient because it existed in both as a form as pill and a hospital for form through its prodrug Paricoxib. And if I give a little more information about what a prodrug is, it's a medication that becomes active in the body after being metabolized.
So regarding the drug's chemical structure and selectivity, it's a sulfonamide, and it belongs to a class of drugs known as diaryl isoxazoles, so compounds with strong COX-2 affinities. Uh, that's thanks to the fit of the COX-2 side pocket, as we mentioned before, not present in the COX-1 enzyme. So this high selectivity, due to the difference in function and form, creates a strong anti-inflammatory effect. And was predicted to reduce gastrointestinal irritation compared to first generation NSAIDs. And its mechanism of action is key in understanding the problems that arose later on in clinical studies. So, in blocking COX-2, this drug reduces prostaglandin synthesis, which reduces inflammation, pain, and fever, which was the goal. COX-1 also remains active and maintains the stomach lining and protection. However, because COX-2 was found to also help produce prostacyclin, which prevents platelet clotting and maintains healthy blood flow through vasodilation. Inhibiting this enzyme and creating a reduction in prostacyclin increased your clotting risk significantly. And that created the mechanistic problem, which is the drug's intended selectivity actually ended up causing unintended cardiovascular effects.
Okay. Let's understand the pharmacokinetics, which is basically like how a drug moves through the body over time, and it includes how the drug is absorbed, how much of it enters our bloodstream, how long it stays active, and how the body removes it. So if we understand all these key information, it will help us explain both how well a drug works and why side effects or toxicity can occur. So the first one, if we look at, is the oral bioavailability, which is 83%, and it is a huge amount. Uh, Bioavailability means how much of the drug actually reaches our bloodstream after it's taken. So an 83% bioavailability means most of the drug is absorbed and active. This is good for effectiveness, but it also means the body is exposed to a really large number of amount of the drug. The next one we have is the peak plasma concentration at 3 hours. This is a time when the drug reaches its highest level in the blood. Around this point, the drug works the strongest, but it's also when the side effects are most likely, uh, you know, like the side effects can come into play because the drug levels are at their highest. And then we have the half-life at 8 hours, which basically means how long it takes for the body to remove half of the drug. So, an 8 hour half life means the drug stays in the body for a while, especially if the doses are taken repeatedly or over time. And then we have, then this leads to the steady state, reached around day 4. Steady state happens when the amount of drug taken equals the amount it being eliminated. At this point, the drug levels stay stable. If dosing continues, the drug can build up in the body. Overall, what we can take away from this slide is that these pharmacokinetic values, they help decide the dosing, and they tell doctors how often and how much of a drug to give, but they also help explain why uh, taking the doses repeatedly can cause drug buildup and increase the risk of toxicity. And then we have the mechanism-based safety risks. So while blocking COX-2 helps reduce the pain and inflammation, COX-2 also helps an important protective role in the body, as it helps produce prostacyclin, which basically is a substance that keeps our blood vessels relaxed and helps prevent platelets from sticking around. So when COX-2 is blocked, prostacyclin levels drop. And this will cause our blood vessels to narrow more easily and platelets to become more active, which increases the chance of blood clots forming. So, without this natural protection, the cardiovascular system is at really high risk. This is especially dangerous for patients who are just like recovering from surgeries, or those who have heart-related risks, because these clots can lead to so many serious events like uh, uh, heart attack, strokes. So,
All right, in this particular 2005 clinical trial, Valdecoxib and its injectable prodrug, Paracoxib, were tested among patients after coronary artery bypass graft surgery, or CABG trials. Um, and the results showed a significant increase in serious cardiovascular events such as heart attacks, strokes, thromboembolic events, or blood clotting issues, post-operative wound complications, which involved a slower healing time after surgeries, and as well as renal dysfunction, as we mentioned. And compared to the placebo, the COX-2 inhibitors produced a clear cardiovascular harm. The study became a turning point because it provided strong, decisive evidence that valdecoxib was unsafe for use in heart surgery patients. And this later shaped the FDA's eventual regulatory decisions. A European Medicines Agency also identified major dermatologic risks associated with valdecoxib, some severe skin reactions, including Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is an infliction on the mucosal membranes and skin, which causes the blistering and shedding of skin, and toxic epidermal necrolysis, which is just a significantly more severe version of Stevens-Johnson, which causes 3 times more shedding and blistering and has a greater intensity of blistering. These occurred at rates in 3 to 14 times greater in patients using valdecoxib than those using celecoxib or Celebrex. As you can see in the graph, how significant that difference is. These reactions were unpredictable, appearing early or late into the treatment, and there was no reliable way to identify at-risk patients. They occurred with no correlation across age or demographics. They were completely unpredictable. And because these skin reactions were potentially life-threatening and impossible to screen for, the EMEA concluded that the dermatologic toxicity represented a major and unacceptable safety risk. In a more recent study continued to confirm elevated cardiovascular risk, showing a relative risk of about 2.26. And that constant is exactly what it sounds like. A person taking the drug has 2.26 times more of a predisposition or likelihood to see these cardiovascular events. It also increases in edema, hypertension, and renal complications. And although valdecoxib caused fewer gastrointestinal side effects than traditional NSAIDs, the FDA's event database showed an unusually high number of severe skin reaction cases that we discussed in previous cases as well, or previous studies. So overall, this multi-system risks from the heart to the kidneys to the skin
mm,
outweighed the drug's intended pain relief benefits.
Now let's look at some FDA requirements the drug Valdecoxib had to meet. Uh, so basically, FDA regulations they apply to the safety and monitoring of the drug. Under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic (FD&C) Act, the FDA requires that a drug remain safe when used according to its approved label, which basically means that company must continue monitoring the safety and keep updating all the warnings and new risks that appears. Uh, but in the case of Bextra, serious cardiovascular and skin risks begin to arise. Uh, and but these dangers were not reflected clearly in the labelings. So there were so much concerns that were rising, and the patients and providers were not being adequately warned and being warned about these issues. So FDA had to take some actions, which we will discuss in the labeling and compliance problems section. So the early labels they underrepresented cardiovascular risks. The doctors and patients were not adequately warned about serious heart-related events. Uh, so many warnings about severe skin reactions. Uh, they were limited and even as rare, but uh, there were some cases when the skin reactions were life-threatening, and that was dangerous. There were so many post-marketing data that showed that these adverse events they were occurring at a really higher rates. Um, but the safety concerns they raised major regulatory and compliance issues for the FDA. Uh, and later on, after analyzing all the data, FDA finally concluded that the labeling updates could not fix the underlying safety problems. So the benefit risk profile for this drug was no longer acceptable, which led to the regulatory action for Bextra.
Speaking of those regulatory actions, they took place after both the FDA and the EMEA between 2004 and 2005. They reassessed the safety across the entire COX-2 inhibitor class. And Valdecoxib quickly became one of the highest risk drugs in the group. And this is what led to those required labeling warnings and strict limitations in cardiac surgery patients. And by April of 2005, the FDA requested a full global withdrawal, and the EMEA suspended its marketing authorization. The central reason was because no remaining patient population could safely use the drug, and the risk profile outweighed any therapeutic advantage. And moving on to the quality control summary, it's very important to understand that the investigation found no manufacturing errors that contributed to the drug's safety problems. The drug was produced according to the correct good manufacturing procedures. The standards were met and expectations for potency, purity, uniformity, and stability were all met. This confirmed that the drug's failure was not due to contamination or production issues, and that the risks were inherent to the drug's pharmacological like pharmacological compatibility itself. And in other words, QC was not a factor in its withdrawal. The problem was the molecule, not the manufacturing.
Okay, let's dive into the SOP overview, or what we call as standard operating procedures, which are basically the rules that make sure a drug is made and monitored the right way every time. These are SOPs are basically detailed step-by-step instructions that help ensure that the drugs are consistent, they are good in quality, and making sure that they follow the safety throughout a life cycle of the drug. There are steps like for a drug like Valdecoxib, SOPs stored at manufacturing. There are procedures for making and purifying the active ingredients, so it's chemically pure and free of harmful impurities. There are also SOPs for tablets formulation and stability testing, which kind of make sure the drug stays effective and safe over a period of time. But because paracoxib is an injectable form, making sure that the sterility is making sure that the sterility is considered and making sure that it is sterile. Uh, Strict SOPs are followed during the for preparation to prevent contamination and infections. Quality control is another key key part. And finally, SOPs don't stop after manufacturing. Uh, so basically, SOPs exist to protect patients and ensures that the company stays compliant with the regulations of the FDA and other regulators. Uh, and this kind of like sums up to everything what we have been like talking about. So this was the reason why Bextra ultimately failed, because there were so many uh, there because the drug had so many mechanism-based cardiovascular risk, uh, where the COX-2 inhibition reduced pain but also blocked protective heart pathways, which increased the risk of the patients getting heart attacks and strokes. The risks was inherent to how the drug worked and could not be fixed by dose changes or labelings. The drug was also linked to serious cutaneous adverse reactions, which we also call as SCARS, that were rare and unpredictable. And sometimes, in some cases, the studies have found out that they became life-threatening. These skin reactions could not be reliably screened for or prevented, but the regulators could not identify any patient group where the benefits clearly outweighed the risks. Even with added safety warnings, the fundamental risks were still there. That's why the FDA had to conclude and tell the company to withdraw the drug, and that was the safest option at that point of time in the market.
Some key lessons that we took away. This case highlights several major lessons for modern drug development. And one of those is that drug selectivity, in this case, COX-2 selectivity, does not guarantee safety. Second of that is pre-approval studies often miss rare but severe adverse events, making long-term post-market surveillance essential. And also that we must act quickly when we see these new safety signals emerging. Overall, transparency between pharmaceutical companies and regulators is crucial to protecting patients and also maintaining public trust. Ultimately, this case helped reshape the FDA's current approach to drug safety monitoring. And in conclusion, Valdecoxib entered the market as a promising, highly selective COX-2 inhibitor designed to reduce pain while minimizing gastrointestinal side effects. However, the drug's mechanism of action produced serious cardiovascular and dermatologic effects that became impossible to ignore, with multiple independent clinical studies and safety reviews to confirm these dangers. Leading global regulators were led to withdraw the drug in 2005. And this case shows the importance of long-term pharmacovigilance and illustrates that a drug can be effective and still unsafe.
Thank you.